Hey, welcome to Fentanyl Facts and Stories. I'm Charlie Perry with my host, Paula Santos Young, and our guest for tonight is Albie Cohen of PAACA. PAACA has been in the city of New Bedford for decades. I can count 30. I don't know if it's a little longer than that, but I think it's 30 years. So, Albie, how you doing?
Good, Charlie. Nice to see you, Paula. Thank you for having me as always. Yes, it's been, I think it's been 38 years. I've been there the past 4 years. It's positive action against chemical addiction. But we really do, which started as that was the focus and the mission was to assist individuals and their families in recovery, wherever they were on their road to recovery. But it's really broadened out as recovery, as addiction touches so many areas of people's lives, and hopefully recovery does as well. But we have a HUD-funded housing program that's with the city of New Bedford. We do a lot with reentry. We have a youth court division, the first youth court in the state of Massachusetts, which is a diversion program for juveniles. We did a lot with COVID. We do a lot with public health in the community, a little bit of everything. It's a real drop-in center. It's located at the end of Route 18 on Coggeshall Street. And if I refer to it sometimes as the last house on the left. If nobody else can help you, you get sent to PAACA, and we can't always help, but we can almost always find an answer. So, I mean, we've had people come in for help with their taxes, help with immigration, just so it's not just recovery. It's really about, PAACA is about one person lifting another person up. We're not a licensed facility, and that's by design. We want to have the discretion to be able to go in different directions, and so we're not limited by any type of DPH license or anything along those lines. And so it really is a place people can come. I mean, the primary focus, as you probably know and have talked about, is housing. Housing is a real homelessness in housing, and homelessness goes right along with addiction. I just read a recent study where 80% of homeless individuals suffer from active substance use disorder. So there's a direct correlation there. That doesn't mean necessarily that the substance use disorder was the cause of the homelessness. Sometimes the homelessness is the cause of the substance use disorder. But regardless, that is a driving factor in the cause of in homelessness. So I can tell you briefly about my story. I grew up north of Boston. At a very young age, I found a group of people with whom I could identify with, and that was rock and roll musicians, namely, the Rolling Stones in particular. As I tell my mother, when your 8-year-old son was dressing like Keith Richards, you were probably headed for trouble. So, and trouble certainly found me. I liked the way they dressed. I liked they didn't follow any rules, which is a hallmark of substance use disorder, the inability to follow rules. And, they had things to say, and they stood up for people. And so by the age of 15, I was in a band, which allowed me to get into nightclubs. So at that age, I was around alcohol, and I was around drugs, mostly marijuana and cocaine at that time. I didn't have a lot of talent, but one of the individuals in our band did. He actually went on to get a pretty big record deal. When I was in high school, I was going to tell my father the night before school, going to college, that I wasn't going. I was going on the road with the band, and my father was very strict, and he listened and he heard me out, and he said, "Oh, I think that's great. There's only one difference between you and Keith Richards, who was my idol." And I thought he was going to fall for this. And he said, "The only difference is talent. Now pack the car, and we're going off to Holy Cross." So we did. I went off to Holy Cross, the 5-year plan. That was due to my alcoholism. It was a big party school, or I partied a lot while I was there. And I didn't at that point know a lot about, addiction. I knew I drank too much. I wasn't really sure why. Nobody was sure why. And I always managed to get things sort of back on the rails long enough to achieve something like Holy Cross, 5 years of school. I then went to law school, where I did pretty well. I went to law school at night. I worked during the day, so I didn't have a lot of time for my addiction. I still drank when I could, but got through law school, and then I ended up working in the music business, which was a fantastic job. I got basically paid to drink and party with rock stars. So for, being involved in the music business and being, idolizing, meeting some of my idols, that was just perfect. And that was a business at that time, really having an addiction, you certainly wouldn't get fired. And it was very much tolerated. You had to really, do something horrific for anybody to call you on it. So it was a great place to be an addict. At that time, there was a lot of travel, there was a lot of money. And so it was just a very good place to hide your addiction. At that time, it was mostly alcohol and cocaine. This would have been the 90s, early 2000s. Then with Apple Music, the industry sort of changed overnight. I mean, we would, you'd have an album. You're old enough. My nephew doesn't know what an album is, but that was back in the old days. Our younger viewers, it looked like a big CD on black vinyl. They're making a comeback now. I highly recommend it. The sound's a lot better. So we would sell, if there was a hit song, you had to buy the album, you had to buy the CD. And so there was a huge markup there. And Apple Music, disrupted the industry. You could buy the one single. And so the companies I worked for went from making $10 a CD to 50 cents a song. So you can see, so the economics changed overnight. There were some other things that happened, and that came to pretty much an abrupt end, where I went into criminal law with my father. And so again, I was working, I could manage to keep things together. But one night I was out, and somebody, and I never really, I didn't know much about opiates. They weren't around. I didn't seek them out. And so it wasn't a big deal. And I was at a bar one night, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, there's this new thing called OxyContin. You should really try it." And I remember, and I went into the bathroom of the club we were in and took the OxyContin, and I came back and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Not much, nothing's happening." He said, "Did you crush it up and snort it?" And I said, "No, I swallowed it." And he said, "No, man, you got to crush it up and snort it." And when I did, that was the feeling I then chased for the next 10 years. That was really it was around, it wasn't inexpensive. So that was the first go around. Ran my law practice into the ground, but at that point there were family members and people who cared. So I was able to get into recovery at that time for a period of about 4 years. I went to a lot of 12-step meetings. I went to the gym. I worked, I worked a lot. I sort of just stayed busy in what some of the recovery community calls white knuckled it, because I never really got to the root of the addiction. I would come to learn later that the fentanyl, the alcohol, they're symptoms of a problem. I'll just fast forward quickly. Was living in South Boston, decent law practice, living with a woman, condo in South Boston, vacations, cars, clothes. And then just didn't have a solution for my addiction, which reared its head. And that's when I got into fentanyl, and things went down pretty quickly. There was a lot of fentanyl around. It was relatively inexpensive. And so I ended up really ended up homeless, lost everything. And that was about 6 years ago. And the one thing that's been different, I went to see a counselor and he asked me, he said, does fentanyl make you feel better? And I thought that was a trick question. And I said, of course it does. That's why I take it. And he said, did you ever think there might be something wrong in the first place? And that sort of a light bulb went off for me at that moment. Of course, it's taken me 6 years. I did initially a lot of work in the 12-step programs. And that was very helpful. Had a sponsor, went to meetings. I always struggled a little bit in the 12-step with the Christian God perspective. Just wasn't quite for me. But at that point, I was, I was willing to do anything. So I wasn't having, ended up homeless and really blown up my life. I wasn't really, didn't have the luxury of questioning how people do things or why they do things. And so I just kept my head down and I did a lot of work in those meetings. And then during the pandemic, things ground to a halt. I wasn't really working to begin with. So what happened was I ended up just by some friends I had met, and they were into what I'd call Buddhist recovery, a form of Buddhist recovery. So I spent a lot of time studying Buddhism for dummies, I call it. I wouldn't consider myself a Buddhist by any measure, but I could really identify with a number of the Buddhist teachings. And from a recovery perspective, I got introduced to meditation. I did a lot of meditation, and where I'm going with all this is I kind of through that process was able to see what was driving my addiction. Because the nature of addiction, I think, and I'll just say for me, I was trying to get security or seeking permanence in an impermanent and an insecure world. And my ego was driving my decisions, driving really my desires to arrange the world as I wanted it to be, which is an impossible goal for anyone. And then when that would all come crashing down, which was frequently, I needed a means to disassociate from myself, and drugs and alcohol are the quickest and most effective way to disassociate oneself from reality. And fentanyl in particular, I know the reason, one of the reasons people take fentanyl is because it works. It works pretty well. I mean, just a quick history lesson. Heroin was invented by, I believe it was the Bayer Aspirin Company in Germany. They were looking for a less addictive form of morphine. They kind of missed the mark on that, but it's based on the word hero. And that's what it makes you feel like. I mean, so who wouldn't want to take something? The effect is also the equivalent of having a sort of a constant sexual orgasm for 4 hours. So all you have to do is sniff something that's going to make you feel like Superman. It's going to make you forget your problems. And so that was a great way to disassociate for me. Amongst the other problems is, so that feeling is highly addictive, particularly if you're prone to addiction, which I did some other work based on trauma, based on childhood, some other things, led me genetics, prone to addiction. And then the second thing is the physical. It's very physically addicting in a short period of time. That is, you go, you'll feel after 2 or 3 days, if you stop taking it, you'll feel extremely ill. The medical books describe it as a bad flu. I haven't met a doctor yet who's gone through heroin withdrawal. It can be excruciating. they can, depending how much you take for how long, it can get in your bones and then has to work its way out. You're talking vomiting, you're talking sweating. It's like an electric current being running through your skin 24/7. Don't sleep for maybe weeks, maybe days, maybe weeks. It is a high price to pay for low living. And so, and the one thing that'll make you feel better instantly is to take more. And so it's a very vicious loop. You're asking an addict to, I'll just take a little bit to feel better. Addicts are not great at dosage and, taking things as prescribed. So even if you'd get a day or two together, the whole wheel would just start over because you're chasing that feeling. And so, and now with fentanyl, the difference with heroin is, came from the poppy seeds and really a bad 3-day detox. And then you could sort of gut through it. But fentanyl, the people who produce these drugs know what they're doing. You go up higher, you get up higher, but it lasts shorter. So it's all supply and demand. They're just trying to get you higher and sell you more. It's like any other economics. It's a business to the cartels. They know exactly what they're doing. And I don't know if it's because it's a synthetic and not natural, but the withdrawal can be a lot longer. So, thankfully I don't have to live like that anymore. And I'm fortunate because 6 years ago, there were overdoses, but not as many as we're seeing now. You just don't know what you're getting. And as I've discussed with Paula numerous times, it's in everything. I have friends who never touched an opiate, who, I only drink and do cocaine. I only drink and smoke weed, who have encountered fentanyl. And, I don't believe that's nefarious in any way. That's trying to get more people hooked on the product. If you go to your dealer and he's got cocaine with fentanyl, it's going to give you a different feeling. And it's a feeling you're probably going to like. The challenge with that is you have zero tolerance, and the doses of fentanyl on the street now, carfentanil, are lethal to somebody who doesn't have any tolerance. And that is, we're seeing a lot of that as well. People may get through that detox that I talked about, that 2 or 3 days, and then want to just take a little, and your tolerance has gone back to zero. And because, you're likely going to overdose, and it's probably going to be fatal. So just bringing it back around. So during the pandemic, Mass Rehabilitation Commission, who is a fabulous resource for anybody with a disability. Addiction is recognized as a disability. They have a lot of resources. They have fantastic people. They got in touch with me and said, do you want to get your licensed drug and alcohol LADAC, alcohol and drug license on through UMass online? We'll pay for it. So I did. I said, sure. I wasn't doing anything. So at my age, back to school, whole different world on Zoom school and everything else. Not like the old days I remember. A lot harder to cut class. I mean, you can't really had no excuse. And I needed an internship, and I ended up at PAACA. And so that's kind of how my story went. I just impress upon people there is a way out. I mean, I read stories, I see statistics. If you're a fentanyl addict or you're an opiate addict, you're going to be on some sort of MAT, or you're going to constantly relapse. I mean, that's just not true. I work with individuals at PAACA. Well, I can probably count 6 off the top of my head who are completely clean from fentanyl. I'm not knocking MATs, medical assisted treatment. That has a place for some people. I mean, some caution around that. That is an opiate. And so, Suboxone or methadone, that has its own challenges. To me, the goal in recovery is to be completely free of any substance. But again, MATs, methadone, Suboxone, mine's been a 6-year journey. And so you don't have to go, as I showed, those 4 years, if you sort of suffer through it alone, you have a much less chance of success than, if you can use some of the tools. So if a doctor or a counselor recommends something you should do, they have the experience, you should listen to them. And everybody's journey is individual. It doesn't have to be traditional NA or AA. I mean, they've been around a long time. They work for some people. But if that's not your thing, you can find, as I said, there's Buddhist recovery. There's all kinds now. And really, recovery is just trying to get free from that addiction. So getting to the root, like anything, before you can find a solution, you really need to drill down on the problem. And then once you have the problem, there's usually, as my grandmother would say, 9 ways to skin a cat. You probably can't even say that anymore, but, and she never skinned any cats when I say that, but that's an old saying. There's all different paths to it that you can take. And so it's difficult. It's hard. At my worst, I picked up a bunch of court cases. My law license was on the line, lost my driver's license. That was a long, hard fight. It's difficult. The criminal justice system is not all that sympathetic to addiction, at least in my experience. But in their defense, they are not a public health agency. Addiction is a mental health. It's a public health crisis. And you're asking an agency that punishes people to address a health problem. And so we have a real disconnect here in this country. You look at countries that have success with addiction, they are not treated through the criminal justice system. And I think the case there is, we've been doing it this way for decades. The problem is only worse. Even in my, short time, fentanyl is more available. It's gotten purer. It's gotten cheaper. So whatever we are doing to attack it is not working. And so I think we need to look at different ways, like what you guys are doing. Just bring awareness to the situation. Just bring different people together. We're all going to need to work together to try to do this. Going back to the 80% of people who are homeless with substance use addiction, that we're not going to wave a wand. We're not going to reach out, and we're not going to help those 80%. We're just not. It's just a very complicated disease. It's what I call pick and shovel work. We're trying to help 1 or 2 people at a time. But if you do help one person, most likely you've saved their life. And so there's value in that. Again, it's very hard it's a very complicated illness. And so, and everybody's different. It could be trauma, it could be genetic based, it could be, mental health, depression based. So it's not one size fits all. Addiction, the causes of addiction come from a lot of different places. And so it's almost unique in every addict. I mean, every addict feels they are unique. That's another trait of addicts. But the treatment is, universal. You have to first you have to try to get some clarity of mind, whether that's through harm reduction or whatever it is, and just try to, think clearly, and then begin the work of finding out what the cause of what that addiction is. And being an addict is a challenge because, my addiction, that means to disassociate. I was telling you about, that's still there. If I'm uncomfortable, things aren't going my way, now I might vape, or I might buy a scratch ticket, or I might, eat some food that's not good for me, or I might go to the gym for 4 hours that day. It's all, there are healthier ways of doing it, but it's all disassociation. That is the problem. That is, to me, one of the major roots of addiction. I mean, there's a famous letter from, I'm sorry.
All right. You guys still there?
Yes.
Yep.
But
All
you're sounding like, what's the word? I'm echoing.
I am, or?
No, Charlie is.
Oh, he sounded okay on this end.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're better now.
Okay. First of all, Albie, for everyone out there that's doesn't know what an album is.
That's a classic, man. That's a
There's
classic.
one. Let's see. Here's another one.
Yeah.
No, you got to pull it out though for
Oh,
our
no.
young
Pull it out?
viewers. Well,
All
for,
right,
for the young viewers,
let's see what this one is.
I don't know who that is.
All right, this is Eric B. and Rakim, and the album is.
There you go.
I don't
So
know.
that's what an album is.
That's what an album is.
And
yes.
I have many more. I have all kinds of genres back there. But when you mention that, it's amazing how my attention went right to it. And let me see. And this is one of my favorites. I don't know if you can see her, but
Tina Marie.
yeah. So she is gone too soon. So many artists from
Addiction.
yeah.
Substance abuse.
Yeah.
Just
Yes.
you read my mind. That's what I was going to talk about. There's so many that have we have lost from this world based on addiction, and more so now just for what we're talking about, opioids and fentanyl. It's going crazy.
Yeah.
Albie, I want to say one other thing is that I talked to a friend of mine, Little Flip Rose, and he talks to me about PAACA and all the different meetings that go on throughout the city. There is so many places. If you need help, they can definitely get you the help that you need. And PAACA is one of the institutes, or one of the venues that I used throughout my career in law enforcement, and they never steered me wrong. Anyone that went in that direction was helped. A lot of times, a lot of people I tried to help, I said, look, let me give you a ride. I'm not going to bring you into the parking lot so everyone can kind of put a label to you. Guess what? I'm just going to bring you around the corner and just go there. Go to that brick building. Just walk in there. Someone will tell you where to go. There's many institutions with the churches throughout the area. No matter what denomination is, they help out in so many different areas. But I just wanted to say that I applaud you and I credit you guys for 5 stars, regardless if you're putting out work that's maybe 1 or 2 stars. Guess what? In my eyes, you're always doing God's work. So keep it up.
Yeah, thank you. No, we try. And as you mentioned, we have a number of 12-step meetings there all day, most days, 8 a.m., 10 a.m., meetings at night. Spanish, we have Spanish speaking meetings Saturday and Sunday, all recovery meeting Friday night. And, for people who were, whether it's PAACA or wherever you go, if you go into a meeting and it's not for you, they're all different. So it's like anything, it's like when you go to the supermarket, I like a certain kind of peanut butter. I tried a lot of, I love peanut butter, but some types I don't like, and I have a favorite. I love Skippy peanut butter. You got to find your Skippy peanut butter of meetings, and find the people. So if PAACA is not your place, and you can just ask. I mean, it's all recovery. Nobody's going to get offended. You don't have to do it PAACA's way. You don't have to do it PAACA meetings. You just have to reach out, and you just have to be open-minded. You just have to come to the conclusion that your way is not the way, and you can save yourself. I spent 50 years trying every which way I knew to do it Albie's way, and that was one of the reasons I got into recovery, because I was out of I had no more ways of hustling, cheating, lying, stealing to keep it going. I was out of answers. So save yourself a few decades and just realize that a little sooner. So yes.
No, I was just going to say, so we love your story and thank you for sharing, because I so appreciate you being on here. And for people who don't know, Albie and I met through my relationship with PAACA and my community partnership with them. They are amazing. They have so many wonderful people there, because I think also one of the biggest things, Albie, that I continue to hear in the substance use and recovery community is you have to, when you walk into the building, you have to really click with that person. And when you click with that person, then the pathway becomes a little bit easier. I don't know if you can agree or disagree with that. I mean, especially now that I'm in the recovery community, I'm noticing that with people who come in, if they mesh with someone, then the vibe, or as they call it, it makes it easier to help the person that's coming to you for need.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like anything. If you can, if you're comfortable, you can be a little bit more willing. I mean, the challenge for PAACA in any place doing recovery work is nobody can force it on you. So if the courts send you somewhere, or if your parents or your girlfriend or your wife, that's fine. But at some point, the individual has to be motivated. Has to be ready to hear some sort of message. But yeah, I would agree. That's, find people you're comfortable with. I mean, recovery coaches are big now. We have recovery coaches at PAACA, or Ignite Recovery has recovery coaches. And it's like anything. If you got a recovery coach and it's not quite working out, you can meet another one or ask for another one. Sometimes AA sponsors a recovery can feel like dating, that you're afraid to hurt somebody's feelings or something like that. But recovery coaches, PAACA, counselors are all professionals. We have no shortage of clients. So you're not going to get along with everybody you meet. If somebody I'm working with it just says, this isn't working, or I feel it's not working, let's try somebody else. That's all. So 100%. And like anything you do, if you're comfortable doing it, you're far more likely to continue doing it.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I think one of the biggest things too, or I should say also, is, and you mentioned upon this, and the work that I'm doing with Phil and Achieve Greatness, is the awareness, the prevention, talking about it, bringing forth this, the crisis that we're facing. And, it's interesting how you mentioned, how that 6 years ago, or I'm sorry, longer, when you were dealing with fentanyl, people weren't talking about it. But here we are, let's fast forward. They still don't want to talk about it. They still don't want to bring up the fact that this is happening, that this is a crisis, that this is killing over 305 a day. They still don't want to attach their name to it, because then if you attach your name to it, you're saying that you have a problem. There is still so much going on that we as a society, people are not willing to do. And I feel, and I say this a lot, and Charlie knows this, that it pushes us, you, me, Charlie, Carl, Reverend, so many others in the community. It pushes us back when we have the naysayers, because my story, and you've heard it yourself, where when I first started talking about how we lost Andrew, and I was telling people that it was, through the marijuana and the fentanyl was in it, and people were like, no, that can't be. That's absolutely not possible. There's just no way. Fentanyl dissolves after it gets to a certain temperature. But I'm still hearing that today. And
right.
it's kind of like, and you talk about how you help so many in the community, and so much has been done. So much good work has come out of PAACA. I can tell everybody online right now who's listening, and we have a lot of followers. Charlie, this. Albie, you're probably going to laugh. PAACA has helped me, and it has been Carl and Albie and Reverend, to not throat punch people every day, because this is where I'm at. Because it's frustrating. It's very frustrating. And I appreciate, you guys standing with me in this, because, as a parent who is trying to advocate and just trying to say, hey, this is what I'm talking to you about. I'm not bringing you statistics that are not knowledgeable from the CDC, DEA, DOJ. And then to have someone like you come and say, hey, this is happening. This is true. And then we still get people who will say to us, and Albie, you've been there. No, that still can't happen that way. How do you change the mindset, Albie? How do we change the mindset of people listening who might be saying, okay, they're talking about fentanyl. This is what Paula and Charlie do every week. They bring all these great guests on, but yeah, I don't think it's as bad as what they're saying. How do you change that?
I mean, I think that's what I talked about, the pick and shovel work. It's both ways. I mean, we're just going to have to change one mind at a time. That's my story. When people think of fentanyl and the 80% are homeless, that's where all the fentanyl addicts are. I mean, I was an attorney in Boston, and I can guarantee, people, I mean, it's a simple numbers game, right? I think it's 20% or whatever of people who've tried are opiate users. So that means 20% of the kids in high school are using fentanyl. Now, I guarantee there's not one parent who thinks it's their kid. My parents certainly didn't think that I was a fentanyl addict. I mean, it just couldn't happen because of my background. And that's all just stigma. And it's extremely unfortunate because, sometimes the way people find out is through a fatality. But we're really, I don't think people realize how much this drug cuts across all sections. Addiction doesn't discriminate. Addiction is not based on rich or poor, your skin color or your income. It doesn't matter. And if you're in, a lot of addictions are going to end in fentanyl or opiates, because as I said, that's sort of the wonder drug. That's no kid gets into high school and says, I can't wait to stick a needle in my arm. That is not anybody's goal, or, to end up homeless. But the progression of addiction, that's just sort of what happens. The drug starts calling the shots, and there you are. So I agree. I share your frustration. I think we need to be trying to reach out. I mean, one of the, I grew up in the Nancy Reagan, just say no. I mean, that was, I'll say it because it's been proven, the dumbest thing in the world. I don't think Nancy Reagan was ill-intentioned. I mean, my idol was Keith Richards. He was a heroin addict. I was always going to do heroin. I mean, you could tell me no. And my parents will tell you, if you wanted me to not do something, tell me how wonderful it is. If I was told not to do something, that was on the top of my list of things to do, because there must be a reason. So, to that point, science has come a long way. We can identify people who are at risk of addiction. Again, family, trauma, physical abuse, sexual abuse, bullying. But it's my frustration, Paul, as the schools won't let us get to those people or talk to those people. And the parents say, my son or daughter was bullied, but they're not going to be an addict. Nobody thinks they are going to be an addict. Right. Nobody starts out with that mentality. And so you can hear, I share that. I think we just have to keep doing what we are doing, and just have to, see, but that there really is that stigma. And, even when I was, as I talked about in the 80s and 90s, when we were drinking and doing a lot of cocaine, I didn't know a lot of, the idea of a heroin addict was somebody homeless or on Skid Row. It wasn't, it was hard to get. And so, certain community, let me tell, as I tell you, I walk to PAACA most days, mile and a half. On half the, I don't want to exaggerate, but at least one or two places on my way to work, I can get a bag of fentanyl, $20, $30. It's as easy as getting a 6-pack, so the stigma hasn't gone both ways. I mean, it is prevalent, it is everywhere. And, just think about it. Is it easier for kids to, underage kids to get liquor or get a little bag of powder, that's going to make them feel twice as good and cost the exact same price. So, right. Yeah, I don't know how we sort of win the hearts and minds. We just have to keep going and keep trying. And my frustration is, schools that have an overdose, or we don't have a problem. If you had an overdose or a fatality, you have a problem. That wasn't an isolated incident. But putting our heads in the sand is not an answer.
No. And the thing is that last week when we had the federal agent on from Homeland Security and Interpol, he was a retired agent from both. He spoke about it and he said it, and anyone can go back and listen who wasn't part of it. Albie, you can go back. He told Charlie and I, he said, if people don't think that the cartel are right here in New Bedford doing what they're doing, then you better think again, because they are. They are in every city and town in Massachusetts. They are infiltrating the cities and towns. They are working in gangs. They are coming in and killing people and walking out. That's just what they're doing. Or they're recruiting the kids, and the thing with you talk about the stigma. How many times have I told you the story, and this, Albie and Charlie, and because of being a former police officer, you'll have someone who will go to the scene, or you'll have something happen with someone, and right away that person's reaction is, oh, well, they're an addict, who cares? No, that needs to stop. They're a human being. They're a human being. And right now, today, the crisis that we are having is not an overdose. It's a poisoning. It's different. And so many people have said, if I were to go back into the streets today, I know I'd be dead, because I don't know what I'm getting. And Albie, you talked about it. It's in everything. Gummy bears, vape pen, marijuana, coke, meth, liquid. They're turning it into, for crying out loud, if people really paid attention to what's truly going on, I think the masses would stop having their head in the sand, and they would come out and sit at the table where we could collectively come up with a plan. Look, we're not going to make them go away, but we should be doing something to try to stop.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just have to, one day at a time, I guess, Paula. No, I definitely share your frustration. You and I have spoken. The ability to get pills on Snapchat. The ability. I just don't think people, to say my son, oh, they don't know any drug dealers. If they have a phone, they know a drug dealer. Drug dealers don't come to our house. The United States Postal Service is the biggest drug dealer in America. I used to get drugs to the post office. You can get them overnighted. You can go on the dark web. You have a little bit of Bitcoin, and a day later you got a FedEx package, and the post office doesn't have time to search all those packages. So I don't think people grasp the severity of the problem or the complexity of it. I think in the olden days, you'd see somebody coming, some suspicious character, whatever that means, come to the door and leave, take some money and leave. That's not how the world works now.
No.
So it is, it is a problem. And I think, unfortunately, in some of the poorer cities like New Bedford or Fall River or Taunton, there's more, it is more prevalent, but I don't know how much that's true. I think some of the wealthier suburbs do a better job of covering it up, or marketing, so to speak, that they don't talk about overdose. Somebody in Dartmouth told me we don't have any overdoses in Dartmouth, and I said,
yeah,
wait a minute,
Yeah.
they just come over, so it's that mentality, it doesn't happen here.
Exactly.
What happens is that they leave certain particular towns and they get to the closest hospital, and then that overdose will come up as a New Bedford overdose or a Fall River overdose, and that's how it all gets eliminated from their towns, and the so-called perceived reputation they want to have, and it's as simple as that. Get your loved ones to the hospital, and then it becomes an overdose in New Bedford and not in the various towns. I don't want to mention any names, but that's what they do. it's a crazy thing we live. And I think that the message is being delivered just like you said, Albie. You got to do it one person at a time. When you try to go in a grander scheme, grander audience, what happens is you spend a lot of energy focusing on someone in the audience, way in the back row, that may be distracted when the person right dead center in front of you is the one that wants to hear that message and deliver that message. So just say what you have to, and that person right in front of you is the one that wants to hear the message, and let them hear it. Don't get distracted in the audiences. I see that with so many different people speaking, is that they're always trying to go out and then focus and capture someone. Just say your message. They're listening. That's the reason why they're there. And don't get distracted. Don't let your message get distracted by concentrating on someone in the audience that just is just say it. Just say it. You don't have enough. You only have an hour's time. In most cases, you have an hour's time to say your message. So just say the message, and then things will kind of touch me. There's every time I spoke, after I left, there was always 3 or 4 people talking to me afterwards, or as I left the facility, or as I left the place. It's so important just to deliver the message, and then everyone else will come to you.
Well, you're the only one who has the message, and I talk about this all the time. And Albie, you've heard me. Only you can tell your story the way you can. No one else can tell Albie's story, like he just did. When I tell my story about Andrew, yes, many people can talk about it, but they can't speak the way I will speak as his mom, or Phil as his dad. And this is why I constantly tell people, and Charlie, it's kind of funny that you're saying this, because the 2 events I've got on Thursday and Friday. But yes, it's the messaging. If you're consistent with the messaging will get across, whether it's one person or 1,000. And, and when I speak, you guys are talking about when you're speaking, Albie has heard me speaking. I don't focus on a person. I focus on my messaging to everyone that's in that room, and to hope that they hear, the desperation, the shattered heart, the crushed soul that comes from a grieving parent, that we don't want you to be us. And again, it's always the messaging. It's bringing forth the correct message, because I'm very particular about that. I'm very particular on when I say something. I'm very cautious because of the fact that I want to make sure that people understand the messaging. And like with Albie sharing his beautiful story tonight to us, it's coming from his heart and soul. And it's coming from a place where, and on one path of his journey, he endured so much, but that endurance has created a stepping stone for so many others. And now for him to continue to pivot and continue to tell his story, and doing the meditation and doing what he's doing. And Albie, I love that you said that, because I had an event in Boston, and I actually had the Nation of Islam come out to my event. And I told Charlie, and he's like, "You got them there?" I did. And they have reached out to me, and they're like, "When are we doing something again?" And it's not, and sometimes it's not so much about focusing on, oh my gosh, you did something with that group. They're human. They are human beings. If people are willing to be in the same room and we can collectively have a conversation, because it's about saving lives, then I don't, whatever and whoever you pray to or you meditate to, that's your business. But if we can collectively be in the same space and come to the collective decision, which we did, that this is about saving lives, that's what matters at the end.
Yep. And fentanyl and opioids will reach everywhere and every place. So if someone wants to talk to you and someone wants to join in the discussion, hey, welcome on board. Have a seat. Let's talk.
Yeah.
You you can talk first if you want to. And that's what I'm here to listen. But
Always. And Albie, thank you so much for sharing
yeah,
your story. We so appreciate you being on. And I know you were at an event today, so I hope I didn't take you away from there.
Yeah, no, it was a busy evening, but I'm always happy to, as you said, let's not get hung up on, how people are trying to do things. Let's focus on what we're trying to do,
Right.
That's all. So I'm always happy. I appreciate everything you guys do. And we're just gonna, even if we're screaming into the void, we're gonna keep screaming. So,
exactly.
that's all we can do.
Yes. And what is your last message for everyone hearing? Because Charlie and I hit how many people? 1,000, Charlie?
Yeah, with what's it, Jesse? Yep, Jesse.
Yeah. And then last week we did
Last
pretty
week,
good.
he was pretty good too.
Yeah.
Yep. So
See? Yeah, exactly. So what would be your last message, Albie, to everyone hearing, to the masses? Because Charlie posts this on YouTube and Spotify, and of course everyone right now live on Facebook
LinkedIn. Yep.
and LinkedIn. Sorry, I forgot one. I apologize.
I
He's
just
always
want to say we hear you, Christy. Christy's listening to us audio, so she's
yeah,
listening to Albie. She's working. She's trying to make her money, and but she's listening to us. And so Albie, you definitely have one of our favorite watchers. Well, everyone's our favorite, but Christy is here every single week. And,
Yeah, I think my final, as you touched on, Paul, addiction does not just touch the addict. It spreads. It touches, it touches the family, but it costs society. It costs all of us. And so it can look pretty bleak, but there is a way out. There is a way out for the addict and everyone else. And so, places like PAACA, shows like this, however. However, I'll use my Grateful deadline. Sometimes you get shown the light in the strangest of places if you look at it right. So what you were saying, Charlie, you never know when somebody's ready to hear. And so what they hear, and so it'll just click, but you can never, you can't give up. You can't give up. You just can't give up. So if you're using and you got to keep using, do what you got to, but at some point, when you're ready, when you just decided I cannot live like this anymore, and you think, but I have no other way to live. I'll be sick. I can't. I've lost everything. It's hopeless. It's not true. It's one step at a time, and there is a way out. 6 years ago I was homeless, so sitting in my own apartment. I have a job. Great friends like Paula. I didn't think would not have thought 6 years ago I would be doing this, and here we are. So that's the message.
Well, feel free to come back on anytime you want. You don't have to send an you don't have to ask for request it. If you're on and you listen to us on Mondays, just actually go in a message, go into the comment section, say invite me, and I'll invite you on, Steve, Albie.
All right,
without a doubt, and it could be you and someone else too. So we have capabilities of putting. I like it when it's around 4 to 6 people. Anything more than that, I don't. It's not too good, And but anytime, any place, I appreciate you.
All right, guys. Thank you, Paula.
No,
nice to see you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Albie.
Thank you.
And Charlie, I'll be seeing you tomorrow night, correct?
Yes. Yep.
What time?
Yep.
Because you didn't tell me the time.
That time will be a later time. It would see it's 8:00 because I have a podcast before that, and then you guys will come on.
Okay.
So,
all right, Albie, thank you so much. Everyone, thank you for listening as always. Next week, we have another amazing speaker, Deputy Fire Chief Scott Johnson. Albie, I don't know if you remember him from my event in August. He works for, not only is he a deputy fire chief for almost 30 years, but he also works for Massachusetts Hazmat Emergency Management Services. So he's going to bring a lot of statistics, a lot of numbers, and he might just surprise a lot of people with what's been happening here in Massachusetts with them going to residential neighborhoods like right here in New Bedford, and people have pill presses. So
Nice.
Yeah, lots to talk about next week.
Yeah, can't wait. I can't wait. Every week it gets better and better. And
this is because you got the. Come on, really, Albie, Charlie, and I have this bet. I told him, I said, you got to catch up. Come on.
I'm just giving you a head start. That's all.
Yeah.
This is really Charlie. I'm just giving you a head start.
Hey, I just got the rock star. Come on, we got the rock star on tonight. Really?
That's it. I love it. I actually, I wish I had. I know the album is in a certain pile. If I could have grabbed it quick enough, I would have had the Grateful Dead album right in front of us. But I know exactly where it is, but I can't pull it up. So
next time.
Next time. So
yes.
All right, man. Love you guys. God bless.
Thank
Keep up the good.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Keep being pioneers, and I appreciate both of you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Albie.
Right,
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night. All right, everyone. That was Albie Cohen from PAACA and my host, Paula Santos Young. We will be back next Monday at the same time, 7:30, with another guest. And every Monday we are here to focus on fentanyl facts and stories. Feel free to join us. You can send me a direct email if you wish, or come on the page. We actually have a group on Facebook, group page that you can join, and we can definitely make contact there. But if you have any stories out there that you want to address and just give out the message like we do every week, every day, really, you can just get in touch with us, and I would glad to have you on. For many people on Facebook Live, LinkedIn, YouTube. It's just a loyal group of people that watch us and listen to us. Mike Samayo, I see you, I hear you. Thank you very much. Good luck with your book. Christy, I know you're at work. You keep it up. My man, Jack Nagia, keep on going. Your Titans will probably win next week, brother. I appreciate everyone that comes on this podcast and adds a few comments, and we get some good views for our local thing, from 300 to 1,000 views, and I appreciate that. It works out very nice for us. And tomorrow I will be on the Really Charlie podcast, where Michael Oliveira, he wrote a book, Don't Take Life for Granted. This is a book he wrote about his story and the loss of a loved one. It's a great book. We'll have him on the Really Charlie podcast on WNB1 Radio, 262 Union Street, New Bedford, Massachusetts, WNB1.com. He'll be in the studio. We'll have him on for about an hour, and then after that I will leave the studio and run my butt home, and we will have a second podcast, and that will be with Paula Santos Young. We have Marvin Speller, and we have Liz Ladle. Lindsay, she will be on, and they're going to talk about love and grief, and that's a very emotional podcast, so please join us. You may be going through the same things that they go through daily, and it would be nice for you to join us and listen, and maybe we can get you all connected, and you can support each other. All right. Thank you. Fentanyl Facts and Stories. We will see you next Monday, 7:30. God bless, and happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there. God bless you. Thank you for giving us your life and your sacrifices, and some of them were the ultimate sacrifice. And God bless. I appreciate you. Take care.
it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yo, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Bumping through your broadcast, grab a chair, fill your glass. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yo, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Yeah, it's the Really Charlie Podcast. Bumping through your broadcast, grab a chair, fill your glass.